Head hopping reminds readers that they are in a story written by an author. We don't get to suspend belief because the writing won't allow us to immerse ourselves that deeply. Louise Harnby.
You're listening to Writing Roots, brought to you by Aspen House Publishing.
Welcome to Writing Roots. I'm Lee Holt.
And I'm Lee Esses.
Today we are going to broach the topic once again of head hopping. And I want to make very clear at the beginning, having multiple point of views is not head hopping. I don't know how many times we can or will end up having to say this, but it is a very common misconception that having multiple POVs in your story is head hopping. It is not. There is a wrong way and a right way to switch between perspectives, and head hopping is a problem.
Now, we did do an episode last November where we were talking about how to identify and the best ways to address head hopping once you find it. And to kind of sum that up, if you're showing two different points of views in the same moment, that's head hopping. You can even sometimes find a little bit of author insert of an omniscient point of view being dropped into what should be a third-person close or first-person close. That still kind of qualifies as head hopping because that omniscient point of view is more or less a character still in the story.
There is a difference in how you handle first person and third person. You can have a truly omniscient narrator speaking in first person while telling a third person story. You can look at a book like Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. Very much had this because they had Hoyd, who was a character in the story, but also the narrator telling the story much later. And you can play a lot with that, but it was not head hopping because it still stayed very much within the narrator's perspective.
So I think one of the things that will really help people understand what head hopping is to learn the identifiers for internal and external indicators of point of view. So something like a physical action of she scratched the back of her neck. That is something that is an external one that can apply to your point of view character or something your point of view character is witnessing about somebody else. And internal is where the head hopping comes in, is when you're having more than one internal point of view happening at the same time.
Internal thoughts, those pieces that are only for the point of view character, would be something like opinions. They have an opinion that a dress is ugly or that this food tastes bad. That is very much an opinion that depends on the character. So that is an internal thought that is for the point of view character only. The other side of that are desires. This lines up really well with those opinions because it is their opinion what they desire. So if he wants to cry or if she wants to just go to sleep, you feel those exhaustion, whatever, if you feel those desires, that is the point of view character's internal thoughts.
Yeah, those things aren't necessarily noticed by an external character unless they are giving some sort of visual indicator or other kind of indicator to say that they are tired or they think the dress is ugly. Those external ones you have free rein on. Those are things like the physical expressions of emotions, of she clenched her fist. I can see that Lee is clenching her fist. Lee knows she is clenching her fist. This is free game for everyone in the room. This is often used to communicate what's happening in other people's heads without them actually having to say it. So if you are wanting to get the internal thoughts and emotions across to your reader of two different points of view without actually taking a second point of view, this is your key here.
Going back to the internal opinion of the dress was ugly, if you want to show someone else's opinion, you can say her face scrunched up in a look of disgust, and when you tracked where she was looking, you saw a dress that was chartreuse and covered in fuchsia sequins. I had to come up with a concept that was probably going to be ugly for that. So you can still communicate other people's opinions. You just have to do it with the external representations of those feelings. Their facial expressions, their body language, the things that they are doing to show what they think of certain things. And the thing that is going to help you the most with that are assumptions. I know we're told not to assume, but people are going to assume anyway. So might as well use it.
This means sometimes that you are misleading a character and not a reader. Sometimes you are misleading the reader as well. Something like a murder mystery where we hear this character using the wrong words in an attempt to sound intelligent. That can show what's truly happening on the inside without us ever having to take his point of view. Another great way to set this up is if you have a single thing that could be interpreted two different ways.
So for something like a name, a character called Emery doesn't want to reveal his name, but he's not really thinking about it, so he starts to say M, and then he cuts himself off from finishing the word. The other people are going to assume maybe that's his nickname and he just goes by M.
Your characters will make assumptions, and that is a great way to guide your readers a certain direction, but your readers will have more information than your characters will, especially if you're taking multiple points of view. Playing with those assumptions is a lot of the real artistry in this type of conveying information to your readers.
And the problem with head hopping is that this is the time where you have an overlap in the internal emotions of your point of view character and the thoughts and the emotions of other people in the scene. And it can get confusing for the reader because they think they're reading the point of view of character A, but they keep getting fed the internal thoughts and opinions of character B. And it pulls them out of the story, it leads to confusion, and it's one of the guaranteed triggers of a DNF. But there are solutions.
There are two main approaches that I take when I'm editing someone where I'm seeing the head hopping. The first one I almost always do is pick one. Whoever's point of view is more interesting for that particular scene, you pick that one and then you externalize all of the other information that was internalized from this particular character. The author might say, but I really want it from this character's point of view. Fine. You can choose to externalize or just cut it out entirely. When you're making it external, you add it to dialogue. She looks at the dress and goes, God, that's ugly. Easy enough. You can make it a physical action where they are giving their tell at the poker table, whatever. These types of things where you move it to external helps enrich the characters and helps us keep track of the story.
The other thing that you can do is to use line breaks. Line breaks within formatting your story are basically a double paragraph break. You have an extra space that can indicate one of several things. It can indicate the location has changed, it can indicate a time has changed, and relevant for our discussion today, it can indicate the character point of view has changed. You will see this most common in fiction, especially in epic and high fantasies where you have a large collection of characters whose point of view we need to see in order to get the whole story. But you can use it at whatever scale you need to.
Some people, especially in the YA and younger fantasy type stories, will have multiple points of view, and they will create a new chapter every time we're changing points of view. That can get exhausting very quickly. So do that with a grain of salt. I would say romance might be a good way to do that, but you can easily break momentum if you have multiple points of view within the same scene. Because you can start the scene from his point of view and end the scene from her point of view, and that would all be in the same chapter. That's totally fine. Just hitting enter twice is enough to do it.
And then we have other episodes on how to make sure you make that character voice clear when you come back from that break so that it is clear right from the jump whose voice it is that we're now hearing. But all of these tools will help keep your reader immersed. This is one of the top culprits of breaking immersion for readers and pulling them out of a story and getting them to no longer believe the characters and believe the story because we're not sure who's even talking at any given point in time.
So when you're writing, I highly encourage you to sit down and immerse yourself in the single point of view character's idea of what is happening in the scene. Their misconceptions, the preconceptions they're coming into the scene with, these ideas that's going on in their head that they're not voicing. If you put yourself in the shoes of the character and stop looking at it from a filmmaking Hollywood, another character camera in the scene, then it can really help enrich your character's point of view and your reader's experience, which cannot happen unless you
Write selfishly.
If you have a question or comment for our hosts or a topic you'd like us to cover, send us an email at writingroots@aspenhousepublishing.com or find us on Facebook by searching for Aspen House Publishing.